Great nickname to Tempe Pipeline, the Him Reaper. It's poaching season in the Big 12, and Kenny Dillingham has been ready. Welcome into PHNX Sun Devil. Short little trending edition here. Eric and Totri ready to break down some news from Arizona State. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Rate us 5 stars wherever you happen to be listening to us as well. Obviously, a lot is always said with how few players Arizona State is losing in the transfer portal cycle. Nobody in the 2 deep has left. Now they're starting to grab some additions, and all of them have something in common, Totri. They're all from the Big 12. Let's go in chronological order, and let's start with some twins. Wade Helton, Brent Helton, 2 big boy offensive linemen, 1 an interior offensive lineman, 1 a tackle. Always good to get some extra beef in there.
100%. Both these guys listed at 6'5", 300 plus pounds. They're twin brothers. They redshirted last year at Iowa State. This is kind of like the KD situation. If you can't beat them, you might as well join them. So
do you think they made the decision on the sideline when they were down 30 and they're just like, you know what? They look like they're having a lot more fun over there.
And they're winning. And they're winning. Yeah, I think it comes down to the fact that Kenny Dillingham and this staff, they tried to recruit these kids pretty heavily prior to their commitments to Iowa State. And then things didn't go necessarily as planned for the Helton brothers while they were members of the Cyclones, and they redshirted, and now they're coming to Arizona State, where immediately you can kind of look at some depth at that tackle position. This is a team in Arizona State that you've got your Jalen Clem, you've got your Josh Atkins, but realistically, a lot of the other offensive linemen at that tackle spot, they're younger guys like a Champ Westbrooks, et cetera. So being able to add these guys as depth pieces, potential projects at 6'5", 300 pounds, 320 pounds, could eventually find themselves starting along the Arizona State offensive line.
Well, and you have to remember what Kenny said about they're going to be selective as to who they bring in. And so you have to imagine that there's competition at every position as to who Arizona State's actually going to bring in, because 100%. Right now, Tempe's a destination, not a place you need to convince somebody to go play. So to take somebody from an Iowa State, where if you're looking at the last couple of years, has been a more established program, even though they lost to ASU last year, they still made it to the Big 12 championship, and you were in their building as well. And so to be able to take 2 guys, obviously twins, so it feels like they were a package deal, but for them to be good enough not only for ASU to want them, but ASU to be good enough for them to leave a more established as far as the last couple of years program in Iowa State, I think that's a big deal. One of the things you mentioned is the fact that Kenny and staff tried to get them before they went to Iowa State. And part of that is because they've been really heavy in, Texas, which we'll get to in a second with another transfer portal commit, but also in California. Both of these guys playing from Centennial, which is a big school in Corona that is known for their football talent, has a nice pedigree there as well. I would not be shocked if both of these guys work their way into the rotation this year. And if there were some injuries, then their number might be called a lot sooner than later.
Yeah, I think, again, these are depth guys that you can look at that I could really benefit from a summer with Coach Joe in the weightlifting program. I think this is a team in Arizona State with, Max Ihanachor, Jalen Clem, Josh Atkins. Like, they've got their tackle rotation as it stands right now. But like you said, you never know with injuries. If these guys come in day one and maybe they just needed a change of scenery to really hit their potential early on. And these are guys that are, again, redshirt freshmen. They have 4 years now of eligibility that they could still use, which is going to certainly benefit Arizona State. And like you said, they're originally from California, Arizona State. They're trying and successfully building that Texas to Tempe pipeline, but the Sun Devils have always wanted and always realistically had somewhat of a pipeline in California. So being able to continue that with some guys that Kenny and staff really tried to get not too long ago is going to help them, I think, in the long term.
Well, let's talk about Texas to Tempe pipeline, but also great nickname to Tempe pipeline, the Him Reaper, which I don't even want to say his actual name
crazy
after that. But Maurice Williams, a true freshman that played for 10 games, special teams on Houston, a safety, has announced that he is transferring to Arizona State. Another Big 12 commit in the transfer portal, not from a great team, but definitely a lot of upside for the safety, originally from Bel Air, Texas.
Yeah, 100%. This guy's 6'1", I believe, 200 pounds. He could play linebacker. I believe coming out of high school, he was a linebacker committing to Houston as a safety. So interested to see what they do with Maurice Williams. Now, he did play 10 games, so he doesn't have that red shirt. At least he didn't use it last year. He could use it this year, but he is a true sophomore going into this season for Arizona State. And they add some depth again at a position where you need it, right? This is a team in Arizona State that we feel confident has maybe the best safety tandem in the Big 12 with Xavier Alford, Miles Rouser. You added Adrian Boogie Wilson from Washington State, so he's there. You've moved some younger pieces to the safety room, a Tony Lewis and Kuba, a Chris Johnson. But realistically, those guys are unproven, at least at this point in time. So you did need a little bit more depth. Now, I know Maurice Williams didn't play a ton of safety last season for Houston. A lot of special teams reps in those 10 games that he did end up playing, but a guy of that size being able to step in, maybe not as a quote-unquote veteran, but still somebody that's been around college football.
He's played Big 12 football.
Yeah, exactly, in this conference. Again, a bigger, heavy-hitting safety kind of fits into the mold of what you have already in the back end of this ASU.
Yeah,
defense.
and before we talk about the football part of it, because again, we haven't seen him really play that position, but you just assume he's got a good head on his shoulders. The fact that you played anywhere as a true freshman, even if it's special teams, a lot of people degrade special teams. It's a very important position to play. But the greatest combination of nicknames that any single position room in the country has, 100-yard landlord, Ghost, the Hymn Reaper, Boogie.
Yeah, it's by far the best position room in terms of nicknames at ASU. I think you could certainly make the argument that it is 1-1 in the country. In terms of
it's definitely up there, and it's definitely in the argument, like you mentioned, for one of the strongest rooms in the conference as well. I think with Maurice, a.k.a. Hymn Reaper, I always got to say that.
Hymn Reaper alongside Ghost.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. I mean,
collecting bodies out there, man.
It works too well.
Yeah.
But he is technically their highest rated transfer recruit, or just in the ranking. Wade Helton is also an 86. His brother's an 85. Maurice is an 86 as well. You're just looking at guys that have belief from Kenny, have belief from the system. And even though we haven't been able to watch him play a ton, Houston was better than people expected last year.
Yeah, especially down the stretch, right? This is a team in Houston that didn't have a ton of offensive firepower, didn't really have a true quarterback that could make a difference, not a lot of skill position talent, at least last year, right? And again, this was a conference where there was a lot of parity. I mean, we're talking about an Arizona State team that was picked to finish last that ended up winning the conference, right? I think this is a team in Houston specifically that's got defensive pieces that will be better this season. Overall, I think the Cougars will be better this season. So to get a young player off an up-and-coming team, an up-and-coming program, I think speaks volumes again to what you said at the very start of this trending, right? That Arizona State and Tempe is a destination. These guys, yes, you look at a program in Houston that's up and coming. You look at a program in Iowa State that was just in a Big 12 championship game against Arizona State. Doesn't really matter. These players, when they hit the portal, there's just something about Tempe. There's something about this coaching staff, and there's something about the culture that's building at Arizona State that guys just want to come play here.
Do you think it's a coincidence that the only 3 targets that Arizona State has, I would say allowed, but committed themselves to in the transfer portal are all coming from Big 12 teams?
I think this is just more so like when Kenny and company first got to Tempe, it was a lot of, we are going to go get guys that we can evaluate immediately. And you know, there's not really a limit on it. We're going to go get as many as we can to retool this roster and reshape it. Now, year one in the Big 12 was a success, and Kenny and the staff watched a lot of Big 12 football. They saw these guys, right, in ways that you and I and a normal fan wouldn't, right? They're watching tape. They're seeing all of these guys out on the field, special teams, offensive line, whatever. So it's not necessarily a surprise because, you know, they're coming from the Big 12. They coached in the Big 12. They won the Big 12. They're going to go try and get some of what they believe probably up-and-coming best Big 12 players available. I mean, we saw it from a guy that is still yet to commit in BYU return specialist Keelan Marion, right? Another really talented guy in the conference that came on a visit to Arizona State. To my knowledge, he still hasn't committed anywhere yet, but they see it firsthand on a week-in, week-out basis, which leads me to believe that some of these transfers could have an earlier hit rate than maybe some of the guys that they were getting from the portal in that first cycle.
Yeah, only one way to tell, and that's for time to pass. But along the way, PHNX Sun Devils will be there. 5 live shows a week right here on PHNX Sports, live at 1 and all your audio feeds right afterwards. Of course, trending pods, tail of the tapes, everything else that you could possibly imagine. Also right here on PHNX Sports. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Help us get to 40,000 subscribers.
Almost there.
Almost there. You got to help us out. And we'll talk to you soon.
We all silly like the mayor.